Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a disassembly discourse video for you. Basically, I'm going to take apart this guy. It's a Cold Steel AD-15 from my personal collection that I don't think I've ever actually taken down. I don't think I've ever actually serviced fully, and so I think that's something it kind of needs, right? Coming pretty factory fresh, but I'm going to do that, and I'm going to take this as an opportunity to talk about a random topic. This is not like my normal videos, of course. In many ways, this is a co-video. That's one of my viewers coined that just today. But nonetheless, figuring if folks are at home and bored, I want to encourage them to stay home and ideally not bored, right? And so, dropping a couple of videos might not hurt that. Today's topic, insofar as there is a topic, this is probably mostly going to be a rant, is just the people that I've come across in dealing with all of this, in being a YouTuber, that is. One of the nice things about it is... this channel's taken a while, right, to get started. This channel has been going for, I don't want to do the math right now, but a bunch of years, like 3-4 years, something along those lines. November of 2015, I believe, was the first video. So it's been going for a while. And, in that process, there were people who've been around since the very beginning, and there have been people who, have sort of come and gone. People who have played a major role in the channel, some of whom know it, some of whom don't. And there were people who've become lifelong friends. Well, I don't know about lifelong. I got a whole lot of life to live yet, right? Well, I sure hope. Who knows? Look both ways crossing the street. But nonetheless, it's there have been some people who've come into my life who were absolutely wonderful, as a result. And some of these people reached out to me when I was very, very new to one of the people I owe a lot of this channel to, and I've talked about this person before, but is my buddy Jim. As many of you who watched the channel early on, or who watch old videos on the channel will know, for a while there, it felt like every damn video, or every damn piece of gear was coming from my buddy Jim. This was at a time where, had I emailed a maker and said, hey, you want to send me something? They'd have been like... No, and that, and to be fair, it makes sense, right? I'm sure they get a lot of random jackasses emailing, and to be fair, that's not something I've done very often anyways. If someone wants to send me stuff, they should just reach out and ask. But nonetheless, my buddy Jim stood up, and we didn't know each other before the channel. I forget how it even came about, but basically, he started mailing me, and we just kind of ended up chatting. And he's a really smart guy, and he's a person who has a lot of very similar thoughts about everyday carry. And as a person who's thought about everyday carry a great deal, and not most importantly to me as a human, but maybe most importantly to me as a channel, he is a person who had picked up a bunch of everyday carry gear and just kind of kept it around. And as a result, Jim was really instrumental in getting my channel off the ground, because one of the things is, you're a new YouTube channel, one of the biggest issues is that it's freaking expensive if you're doing gear reviews, right? Pocket knives aren't as bad as, say, watches, which, by the way, do not get into watches. But anyways, it's really, really expensive to do reviews, because you buy something and then you sell that something. And especially if it's not something you're highly, thoroughly recommending, there's a really good chance you're going to end up taking a bath on that, whatever something it is that you purchased. So you are not going to make money doing YouTube reviews for a good long time, if you ever do. And so that's well, that ain't freaking good, is it? But nonetheless, so early on, Jim kept sending me gear, and, he would just send these, USPS medium flat rate boxes worth of stuff. And it was not just like stuff that was just like, junky or anything like that. These were things that he genuinely liked. And he would do me the favor of, we would talk about things usually after I'd filmed my review. But, he's the person who sent along a lot of stuff that's actually really, really good that I didn't know about when I started the channel, right? He's the person who sent along, like, okay, some of the HDS flashlights. I never would have had a chance to check those guys out, but because of him, I got a chance to. And he was very open, and, I learned a lot from him, and also learned a lot from the gear that from the gear that he sent me. Jim played a really fundamental role, and I've got other folks in the kind of in similar veins, not necessarily, and a lot of folks that loan me gear, and the people who loan me gear early on are universally gems. I obviously don't remember your names, because I don't remember my own damn name some days, it feels like. But at the same time, there have been people who've had that outsized role in the channel. And that's kind of it's a wonderful thing. And I don't know to the extent that they understand, what that meant. For me at least, when Jim was doing that I didn't realize it at the time, but that kept me going. That kept me pushing through what is a very expensive and, frankly, a very low reward time in a YouTube channel's life. Very early on, you are likely not making any damn bit of money. And, frankly, pretty later on, you're likely not making any damn bit of money. I mean, YouTube is not that lucrative. Let's be real here. But so, when it wouldn't have been possible for me to sit there and actually purchase, each one of these things on my own, I had a fresh supply of reasonable gear to check out. And so it made all the difference in the world to me to be able to do that. And he was very generous with, oh, yeah, send it back when you're ready. And so, that was a person who made a lot of difference for me. Then there have been other people I've formed friendships with, in there. I mean, my buddy Sid is another gem of a human being. He is a very enthusiastic collector and a very passionate collector. I respect greatly his true passion for the gear that he has. He's not a person who has, an, oh my God, amazingly large collection. Generally speaking, I mean, he's got some stuff, but I gather he runs a pretty tight ship. But the stuff that he has, he loves. And not only has Sid been a major supporter of the channel, and he's been a patron and things like that, but he's just been a good friend. He's been a constant, he's super kind. He's an amazingly kind human. And so, he's helped me out a couple of times. He's bought a number of the things that he's actually the owner of a couple of my original Grimsmos. He's been great there, but he's also just been a good human and a good friend, and he's a great guy, generally speaking. And so I met him through the channel, but I wouldn't have known him otherwise, and that's been great. And honestly, there are a bunch of other people who come to mind. And, I could start naming people over and over and over again. I mean, my buddy Chris, who repeatedly trolls me in the very best of ways. It's the person who sent the damn Buck Rapid Fire, and still regularly sends some stuff along for me to take a look at. What was the latest one? This little cricket ended up on my table via Chris, and with no expectation of return. It's just like, and he's just a super generous guy, and he's a person that some of these people I've met in person. Some of these folks I've never actually met. I was able to have a lunch with my buddy Jim at one point in time when we happened to be in the same rough state, and that was great. But, some like my buddy Sid, I've never actually met. And that's the funny thing about this internet-related thing. Like Tony Scullambrini, Everyday Commentary Tony. He and I run he runs the podcast. I'm a co-host, but we do this podcast together, right? And I would consider him to be a good friend. He's a great human being, and is somebody I really enjoy and appreciate. But we've never actually met. I keep hoping that one of these damn days we'll both be at a show together, but, it doesn't look like that's in the cards anytime soon. But we'll see. I mean, that would be wonderful. But, there are these people that have played this outsized role in my life, but I've never actually met them. I have no real, they're just random jackasses in practice, but again, so am I. But they've been there. And, one of the other groups of people that I'm super grateful for, and this isn't just a plug, but my Patreon patrons. Because, okay, look, Patreon, if you are a brand new YouTuber, the only reason that this channel is still a thing, honestly, is because of Patreon. Because, again, there are these times. It takes a long time before a channel has any momentum of its own, right? Unless you go super viral super quickly. If you get, like, a shout-out from some major, freaking PewDiePie shouts you out, you're probably good on subscribers for a little while. That's great. However, in practice, for a long time, you're just kind of slogging, right? And as you're slogging, you're not making a whole bunch of cash. And again, like I said, YouTube isn't all that lucrative, so don't go down this road thinking, I got a new career. I wouldn't recommend that. It's only by luck am I here, I would argue. But nonetheless, the Patreon thing has been a game changer for me, mostly because... Did you just hear that little click sound right there? That was this spring hitting the forehead of my Batman mask. Anyways, back at the ranch, the disaster quite nearly... that would have been ugly. Nonetheless, I hope that click was audible on camera, because it was sure audible in the mask. Whoops. Now I'm hitting the camera with... Anyways, and these are the people that these people support this content. You got to ask questions, right? But no, I mean, getting to know the patron thing has made it possible because it has made it again. It's made it doable to keep spending that money, and it's made it doable. Not just in terms of just like buying new stuff. Yeah, that definitely helps there too. But also in terms of why are you not wanting to go in? What's your issue here? Are you? Oh, there's a D shape to it. Okay. Pop you in. But I also sell gear to my patrons. I will very often, anything that I have for sale now, you freaking come loose. Pivot. But very often, first thing, if I'm going to sell something, it goes to patrons first because they're the ones supporting me, so I try to support them. But look, it would be very easy for that to be a very transactional relationship, where it's just like, okay, yeah, thanks for paying me, bye now. But one of the things that's brought me a lot of joy, actually, and a shocking amount of joy, actually, is my there's a Discord. I started a Discord server for my patrons. This just started off originally as just like a little kind of a perk thing where I could do on occasion like a patrons only Ask the Nick there in the voice channel, or I could do, just post things there and just chat with folks a little bit. And, it's a nice way to, I'm sitting on the couch, I'm watching something with the wife or something, but I'm, basically digging around on the computer, so why not just talk to some folks? And so that turned out, it started off that way, but I have to say, I am really, really thrilled with the fact that it's become a community of sorts. I mean, of course, it's a community. It's a group of people put together. That's kind of the definition of community, but nonetheless, it's become a community that's actually worth a damn. I will come home, so to speak, and especially after like a long day where I might not have had the ability to really focus too much on anything for the channel, at work, and I will come home and I'll find that there's a vigorous discussion going on just among my patrons about some random gear-related thing, or in some cases not gear-related at all. That's been an absolute joy for me, and I've gotten to know some of them very, very well, and I've gotten to know some of these folks well before they were patrons. My buddy Nathan's another person to shout out here. He's an absolute gem of a human being, and he, he's been. I've actually had the opportunity to meet him a couple of times now. Among other things, he was my ride to and from the airport for Blade Show because he happens to be around those parts. But nonetheless, it's been he's a wonderful human. He's loaned a bunch of stuff to channel, but he's among my Patreon patrons, and he's also one of the people one of the two people, the other being my buddy Nick, who's again not me, who I've tapped to be moderators of my Patreon channel, of the Discord there, just because I trust their judgments overall, and if I'm not around and somebody's doing crappy stuff, I trust them to be able to knock that down. Not that people do that very often, but it could come up, and I want to make sure we're building a good community, so to speak. But that's important to me. But I'm really happy about the community that I've kind of come across here. And the other, whoop, there went that spring. Well, I'll keep ranting. Oh, I'm now with the worst case scenario, right? Like a spring goes flying, and I'm looking through I couldn't have made it through the door, and no, it's sitting right here in front of me. But anyways, that's been a joy, actually, to see, the people who are, people who are fans of the channel have actually turned out to, create this great little community that's sort of, sure, it's about gear, but in some ways it doesn't feel like it is. It's just a group of, I guess, like-minded people. We're all gear geeks, and that brings us together, and I think engenders a sort of mutual respect. But, we got people of all different ages, all different locations, backgrounds, all different kinds of things, and, it's been great. My buddy Josh, Connor, all of those folks out there, I mean, Med, he knows who he is. All sorts of people out there just doing, just being good people to one another. And that's been one of the great things about the knife community, generally speaking. I mean, just today, one of the things that inspired this rant actually was a guy named Robert sent me an email roughly saying, Nick, thank you so much for introducing me to the knife community. It's a great group of people. And you know what? I'm tempted to agree with you. I think that there are a lot of wonderful humans in the knife community. Sure, there are some crappy people out there. That's for damn sure. And you don't have to stick around too long to start hearing some horror stories. But the thing is, I feel like the horror stories, at least based on my experience, tend to be the exception, not the rule. And by and large, I think when people are banded together by some weird common interest, because let's face it, how many people in the world would you walk up to and say, I like knives, and come away as anything other than like, oh my God, you should probably be talking to somebody about that. I mean, most of the time, you're going to get mostly judgment from the normies about that whole situation. And so I think there's a lot of feeling of like, okay, you're really passionate about this one weird thing that I'm really passionate about. That's cool. We share something. We can be kind to each other. And so there is so much of that kindness out there. The knife community has an amazing amount of kindness, an amazing number of people doing amazing things for charity and just for each other. Even just like, I've lost count of the number of times I've seen somebody. And by the way, collectors, one really good thing you can do for the knife hobby, so to speak, is when you see somebody who's brand new to the scene, somebody who's really super, fresh to things. If you've got something that's, because after a while as a collector, your standards start to shift around a little bit, and you end up with this kind of stash of gear that's really good, but it isn't something you carry very often. Maybe you've gone higher end, or frankly, maybe you've just found that you specialize. And like, you know what, it's really hard for me to not carry this one thing that I really like a lot. One of the very best things I see collectors doing is just, when somebody comes in and posts, oh no, come here. I'm just trying to get some of this Loctite out of here. And people who say, oh my God, I lost my knife, or even just generally, like, hey, I just got this knife. It's not really doing so hot. And they post some beat up M-Tech. It's like, this is a good time for somebody to step in and say, hey, nice knife. And don't be a dick about it. Hey, nice knife, but I got another nice knife you might be interested in, and just sending it their way. Because, sometimes that's all it takes to start some, because that person then later on might be able to do that for them. They might be able to, and this is again something my buddy was just talking about in that email. Like, you might be able to pay that forward down the road, right? They might be, if you get deep into the hobby, then you'll end up with something spare, and then sooner or later you'll come across and do this with random people in your life. Sure, if somebody at your work takes out an M-Tech, it is your solemn sworn duty to not be a dick about it, but just to find something like, hey, I got a gift for you, or something like that, and see if they're interested. Again, don't be a dick, but it's something that I think we as a group of enthusiasts / giant nerds can do that makes things a little bit easier and better for folks, and I think that there can be a joy there. But I think, one of the nicest things, and then of course, the other thing I got to highlight is that as you grow in prominence, so to speak, and again, prominence, pretentious jackass, but as you start to grow a little bit more in that world, you start to get more access to makers themselves. They'll start to talk to you a little bit more, and there are some wonderful makers out there. There are a bunch of people I've learned a bunch from, and that's great. And there are a bunch of people who are just kind humans in and of themselves. And, generally speaking, they're swamped. And, but nonetheless, sometimes it's nice to have, I don't want to say a relationship, but at some level, it's just like and even friendship is pushing it. Because, for me at least, it's very difficult to negotiate those waters of, like, fundamentally, I am a reviewer, right? Fundamentally, I am, is that play? Fundamentally, though, I'm standing in criticism of their work, so I don't want to get too, like, chummy, oh, yeah, sure, cover my hotel at Blade Show. That gets a little bit corrupty pretty quick there. But what I am interested in doing is, learning more from them and getting to know these folks as humans. In some ways, that might make it a little bit harder for me to really tear into them, but at the same time, I'm trying my best not to really tear into anybody these days. I'm trying my best to find good gear that I don't have to tear into, because I think that's a win for everybody. I've got my whole gem hunter idea based on that. That's better. That's way better. But no, there's that, and then the reviewer community is great. You all know who you are, but there have been a couple of group chats that I've been involved in, where it's just like a bunch of people who think about this stuff a lot, and it turns out that it's a great little group of folks. Constantly my Instagram has something going, and it's usually because of that group of jackasses. So, I don't want to name drop because that's a little classless, but, there were some wonderful people in this community. So I think sort of insofar as this rant and this story time has had any, real meaningful moral of the story, so to speak, it's that there are a bunch of ways to be really awesome to people in a community like this. One of the things that you can do is you can be like my buddy Jim, and you can send people gear. This is something I try to do on a fairly regular basis, but, and please, I get a ton of emails already, don't you? Oh, Nick, hey, you should send, I try to do that when I can, but it's a little tricky. But nonetheless, you can send gear along to new channels that are struggling to find content. If you're not carrying it anymore, send it along. That's a beautiful thing. And it's a way that you can really help somebody, especially if a channel that you find is really good. You find that they've got great stuff to say. It's something it's a great idea to do, and it can really make the difference for somebody. You can be just a friendly person, right? Like my buddy Sid, and you can offer some support. You can become a patron. Seriously, I do my best to be patrons to a lot of to be a patron. That is to a lot of folks who I think are doing it right in the knife world. I've probably missed a bunch of people, and if you're looking down, realizing he's not my patron, that's not like I hate you. That's just like I forgot about, or I didn't know you had a Patreon. But nonetheless, I mean, this is a good place to support people, and this is not like a plug for go join my Patreon. You're welcome to, but you're not. The content will continue being just as free whether you're a patron or not. So that's your own private choice, so to speak. But that's another way that you can be there for people, but also just be a part of a community and be a kind part of the community. That's a joy too. Be the person who, when somebody is being a dick, is pointedly not a dick about it. Be the person who says, well, man, is that really the thing? Be kind about it. Be a gem to each other. And I think that makes our community a little bit better too, generally speaking. And then, of course, as you start to grow, I know a lot of folks are in this business or are in this just because they want to be knife makers, right? Or maybe they're interested in getting into that someday. When the time comes, then share your knowledge. That's one of the things I've also appreciated so much, when people share their knowledge about what they know. And frankly, even if you're just an enthusiast, sharing your knowledge. I learned a lot about flashlights from Jim, 100%. That wasn't an area of core competency for me, so to speak, but I learned a bunch there. So, if you can share your gear for new channels getting started off, that's great. If you can share kindness for people, that's great. If you can offer some financial support, that's great. If you can just be a kind commenter. Heck, there are commenters, people who've been commenting for years and years and years, where every damn time I see their comments, and oftentimes those folks are patrons too, it's just like they're always universally kind. They're always universally just awesome. Like my buddy Keith. He's just an amazing commenter. I see him every damn time. He's great. He says nice things. And, these are folks who just like make the world a slightly better place and make the community, or specifically, I guess, my community, maybe a better place, generally speaking. But this is a great community. There are a lot of really good ways to help people, and there are a lot of good people in it. And I appreciate that very, very much. That's been sort of the, sure, I get to check out a lot of cool gear, and sure, it's definitely made itself a little bit more worthwhile to run a YouTube channel. However, at the end of the day, I think the people are kind of the best part of this, because I've made some great friends in all this, and, people who are, not just about gear, people who are genuinely good people, who I'm thrilled to know as individuals, even if someday, I somehow manage to get out of knives, or watches for that matter, or they do. I would still like to call these people friends, and, that's been a joy. Again, sorry, I'm not naming everybody. I don't, please don't feel hurt if I forgot to name you, but you're all amazing. And that's been one of the nicest things in all of this. So anyways, there you go. This knife is now running so much smoother than it was before, especially on the open there. And as I, carry it more and open it more, it's going to be a thing. This is already a really great design, and I think that smoothing out is just going to make it a little bit better and better and better. And we'll take it from there. So anyways, keep being awesome to each other. Keep being a great community. Seriously, I'm proud to be associated with, well, most of you. We'll put it that way. But yeah, anyways, there you go. Hope this was interesting to you. At the very least, you'll get a full review coming up again on Thursday. But have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.